I'm not going to change anything yet because before I touch anything, I want to put it in a Git repository so I can track changes. As a matter of fact, I could do that right now. Very first thing you want to do. All right, we'll do a git init right here. Let's see what all files we got here. So this is all untracked because I did just make this. And I'm going to check in everything. Normally you wouldn't check in everything like this, like the debug files, executables, you wouldn't check in. I'll clean it up later. I think I want to check in everything now because, and I even got these temporary files here. So, picking up where we left off from my last video, before I make any changes, I want to make sure everything is in the repository to begin with. And I'm going to go ahead and stage the whole folder. This includes the fcar files, this attack lists, the names list, all of the build artifacts, these backup files, and normally you could use Visual Studio Code. Write your commit message up here and hit the commit button, and that would make your commit. But what I want to do instead is create a time-stamped commit. And so if we look at the manual for git commit specifically, it will tell you you can put in a date. And I want to do this because it's been so long since I made modifications. I want to reflect that in the repository. Override the author date used in the commit. Now, what is the date on this file? Because I think I want to go by the original modification date. This has a date on it still of June 19th, 2010, and some of the other files go even further back. The attack list, I think, is the oldest one here, on May 10th, 2002. I almost want to make a commit representing the May 10th date, but I think I'm going to go by the C++ file since this is last modified. And I don't know that I necessarily have the originals. There's these two tilde backups of the original file, but they don't have the correct dates on them. They have the date that current file was last modified. All we have to go by is the month and day that I have in the C++ file itself. So I'm going to refer to properties for the exact date and time. And we need our commit message. So there it is. It took the date that I put in using that format. It recognized it as since it's the ISO format for the date and time. So now that I've done that, let's clean up. This is the generated build file. DSP, Developer Studio Project, Developer Studio Workspace. Again, I don't know NCB. OPT, I originally suggested it might be an object file, but that's actually up here in the debug folder. So the obvious first deletions are these ones. So long. We'll remember you in our repository. I'll delete the debug folder. I'm going to delete these two. Maybe in another video, if I'm feeling so inclined, I'll go back and do a side-by-side between some of those tilde files and the C++ file at the time. I'll take advantage of the state of the repository as it sits before this next round of changes. We want to give a meaningful commit message each time, and so I'm just simply saying clean up here. So there you go. You have a gap of 15 years and 4 months between the two commits. Man, when I upload this to GitHub, it's going to look wacky. I love it. The next phase of this, and really the goal of this video, is to get this to compile. So I could hit run. It gives me an option to run G++ build and debug active file. We're going to go ahead and do that. I was expecting that. We were all expecting that. They give you a nice list of the problems. There's a lot of problems. Oh Lord. We knew about string copy, ifstream. We could probably solve a lot of problems here just by typing using namespace standard. And when I recompiled it, the underline went away. So now what do we have? This one's complaining about no create is not a member of stdios. I'm going to have to do a little research here. Okay. Looks like we're going to have to use ifstream in place of ios no create. There's probably more places where we have to do that. There's really only one or two places where we would use maybe an output open, ifstream out. That would be when we save the career file. So in career save, there's another one that should be ifstream in. I'm going to ignore these files. They were generated by Visual Studio Code. Yeah, as a matter of fact, the whole .vs code folder gets the ignore treatment. I'll commit that first. You always want to commit early and often. As a matter of fact, I have really two sets of edits going on here. One where I added this global using namespace standard, and then one where I went to each of these lines and replaced iOS no create with ifstream in, which I'm still not sure if it's going to work, but at least it seemed to make the compiler happy. Happier. So we're going to stage this and create a new commit, add standard namespace ref, and change iOS no create to ifstream in. And now when I try to run it, I still get errors, but we're down to 37. This should be an easy one to fix. So what I realized when I was reviewing the previous video is I declare int I in here, and then I was able to reference it outside of the loop down here. It shouldn't have been allowed in the first place. It might have been because I was using the Borland C++ compiler and it was looser and it's how it treated the variable scope. So I'll initialize it down here, up here, I equals 0. And we'll say for I equals 0, and here we reset it. Now when I run it, it brings us down to 35. Here we say main must return int. That's new. You can't have void anymore. It has to be int. We'll just make it return 0 at the end. No error code here. There's not really a crash out moment in here. And that change should bring us down to 34. No instance. Could I do that? Will that make it happy? Maybe that's why I have constant characters, because that's what it's looking for. There's other overloads. Maybe there's one that takes standard string here. Does this work? Does this reduce our count? 32. Let's see if there's a sub for string copy. The docs say that this should take C string, so we're going to add that in here. It's still underlined. Oh, nope, it's cleared. So we're getting closer to something that might just about compile. So opt on the left is a standard string, and we're trying to assign it a character, but I think it doesn't know how to translate a character to a string. Oh, we're saying whether the string is equal to the character y, but what if we change it to double quotes to compare a single character string on the right? I bet if we change all of these guys from characters to strings, one thing that might happen here is, and this is probably already happening before, get ch is supposed to return a single character, but what we invariably put in here is going to end up potentially accepting more than just one character. I got ahead of myself with the edits again. I just realized I was supposed to be committing individual changes as I went along. Also, you notice I'm using a combination of standard cin into the opt string, but I'm also using getch. Getch really was intended to only accept a single key press, as opposed to standard cin, which was the whole line up until you press enter. So if I can replicate that, that would be cool. Let's see what we have left. We're down to 18. Still have 2 uppers showing up here. But before I get ahead of myself, it's time to do another checkpoint. We added cstring. We changed the position of the int I declaration. We changed the signature of int main. We removed the IFStreamIn parameter from this carFin open because it couldn't accept 3 parameters, it only accepts 2. I don't know if that's a flag-based enum where I could do in or binary. Let's look into it. I could change them all to this, just declare it, but we do reopen files multiple times at the moment. But this is a nice target to have when we go back and refactor how we open files. Here's an example that's showing the pipe thing that I was talking about earlier. So maybe they are treated as flags. I know it's just a question and not an accepted answer. Nobody seems to complain about the fact that they're piped together like that. I'm going to trust that that's valid. So we're actually going to change this to ifstream in pipe ifstream binary. By the way, that's one of the reasons I like to review my commits before I create them, because sometimes you catch stuff like that on review. It's like, well, wait a minute, maybe that's not the best way to do that. Another thing is you catch edits that you made, or maybe you didn't make the edits, but something else made the edits for you. You say, well, I didn't want to commit that. Being able to capture that helps you create cleaner commits. To recap, we have cstring, we have our movement of the declaration of int I, which it's immediately assigned 0. I think we could do without this assignment. The compiler would probably optimize it out anyway, but since we're doing it right down here and then we're making another reference down here, I figure there's no point in giving it an initial assignment. If there were some lines of separation, like I gave you that example in the last video about the main function and how we have int option declared up here, and then way down here, option is assigned the output of menu. And it really is the first time it is used or exercised by the program is it's given this assignment of menu. So it's declared up here, and in its first use is an assignment. So as long as that's the first use, it's fine. And we know that it is the first use as long as this is a do while loop and not just a while loop. If, for example, a while option not equals 0 up top, then we would have a problem because the first exercise of the option variable would be trying to read it when it hasn't been initialized. The compiler would probably yell at you for that too, saying, hey, don't do that. Bad things will happen. Let me start taking notes because this is the 5th or 6th time I've scrolled through this thing. Include cstring, move int I declaration out of for loop, change void main to int main, fix ifstream open parameters issue. And the 5th thing is change all string car comparisons to string. That's a big commit message. Fortunately, we're allowed to have a multi-line commit message, and it would help to stage it first and then commit. Whoops, what did I miss? Oh, right. Yeah, let's go ahead and include that. I think it shows here. Okay. So we're 43 minutes into my initial recording, and it still doesn't compile, which means I think I made the right call scoping this. Let's right here. I want to run it here. I say run it using G++. Let's find a replacement for toUpper, because if it's a standard string, there might already be a function built into standard string that lets you uppercase a value. Standard C++.h. That doesn't seem right. Well, what does it say? S begin transform. Using standard transform is one method. Using standard to upper with loop. Oh no. Okay. Either way, this guy is importing standard C++.h, which might be shorthand for like all of the libraries that he wants to include. Let's try transform. Let's see. And those aren't just properties or fields, they're functions, which makes sense to me. This isn't C#. Where does transform come from? Defined in header algorithm. Let's add it. Do we know what this is yet? It says it's undefined and then shows the signature. I think the first message is a leftover from my previous attempt to compile rather than a live update. Oh, well, I'll take it. So what is the signature? It's the iterator, the iterator, the iterator. Begin, end, begin. The parameters are listed. An input iterator, an input iterator, an output iterator, a unary operator. What a mess. Good grief. What is this? This is standard string, right? This is ridiculous. I'm trying to match my format here. I don't want to call it to upper. Maybe I'll just call it string upper. We have to return this because I really, really don't want to have to. I really don't want to have to repeat this. This is, I mean, I think it's gross. It feels like too much. No suitable conversion from basic string to standard string exists. Isn't it? How does that work? I'm out of my element here. This returns, this is a template function. String s. It really can't be that complicated, can it? Maybe this will make it happy. Makes it happy up here, but probably not down here. Opt equals, so it doesn't like, yeah, it's a lot easier to read code than it is to write it, isn't it? Especially when you get lost like this. Why is it returning an iterator? Because this guy, returning s begin, comma, sn, comma, s begin, comma, colon, colon to upper. I could loop through it like he's doing here. That feels like it's, I don't know if I like that. Oh well. I'm going to try that. We're going to go back on this algorithm thing. We're going to go up here where I added this function in. We're going to turn it back to a standard string. And we're going to say, we're not passing a by reference. So this is a copy of what was passed in. We're going to go ahead and overwrite it. That's the beauty of putting this in a function. If it turns out I like to transform better or decide I'm going to change it to transform later, we could use this function to do it. Problem is solved here. We're going to take string upper. All instances of to upper will change to string upper. There's one. On a bigger project, I would do a find and replace, or at least a find, review, and replace. I don't like to do a blanket find and replace because sometimes you overwrite stuff you don't intend to overwrite. I'm going to continue with the tradition of having the function declarations up top. Go ahead and declare this up here. Function prototypes. This is string upper. This comes before create and comes after career menu. So we'll just drop it in right there as our function prototype. Maybe there's something to this. We could take this and everything that was declared here except maybe I think int main isn't included among the prototypes, but we could have this in a header file and then all of the referenced functions are in a separate C++ file from this file. We would have to have a classes header as well for the career and fighter. Let's review. We add the function prototype, we add the function implementation, we change to upper to string upper so that we can process the string. And there's 3 references that we change. Replace attempts to run to upper on a string with a bespoke uppercase function. We'll commit that. So we're down to 12. Getch is undefined. I've been avoiding that. I feel like it's time to tackle it. Let's figure out what Getch was and if there's a modern equivalent. Let's check Geeks for Geeks what they say. So they have an int Getch void. It does use con.io. Could we still use con.io for that? Oh! What's going on here? Do I have to be specific? This one could be tricky. Here's a guy who did it in 2022. This might be specific to Windows. This guy is talking about conio.h, and it aligns with my experience that this was specific to Turbo C, which was Borland's C and C++ compilers, which is a figment of the 1990s. But he's also references standard I/O, which includes printf, scanf, and getcar. Getcar might fill the role just fine. Let's try it. It was C standard I/O, but I don't have that in here. I'm gonna have to include it. Trying to maintain some semblance of alphabetical order here. It's not really working out. I don't want to change the order now because it's kind of weird to just do that in the middle of everything else I'm doing. You really want to try to keep your commits atomic and isolated. Getcar. It returns an integer. It's a possible cancellation point. It's worth a shot. We're going to try all of the get ch's with getcar. This may backfire, but we'll overlay all the ones that we had. And then when I run it, the only thing left is this one error about basic IF stream. Before I commit to that, I want to double check what getcar is. Getcar is a function that takes a single input character from standard input. The major difference between getcar and getc is that getc can take input from any number of input streams, but getcar can take input from a single standard input stream. The thing that was handy about getch was that getch you type in a character and it immediately moves on. I don't know that getcar is going to work the same way. It might let you type in a character, maybe it does some fancy stuff with the keyboard to hide anything besides that character, or maybe it does just go straight to, moving on with the program once you type in your one character. That would actually be very handy. Here's hoping that works. We're going to go ahead and say replace getch calls with getcar calls. Goodbye, conio. So that just leaves one error remaining. Now, car fin, we're opening the, oh, we were looking at something like that earlier. That might be all we need to do. Holy cow, I think it's running. Did it run? It did compile. Breakpoint 1. Did I accidentally set a breakpoint on line 188? Can I just hit continue, start debugging? No, it's already running. It's in menu 261. So, oh, there it is. There it is. No holds barred combat. You have to read to believe. I think it's working, you guys. All right, can we continue? Here we are. Let's type 1 and enter. Oh, but we skipped right over the first combatant's name. Oh, crud. What were we doing here? Why did it do that? We read C in opt. So this is an example of a bug we're going to have to work with. I typed in my input, and then I had to press enter. And I think that enter key carried forward to the first entry in exhibition, the first combatant's name. We're using cin get line. I think the problem is I'm using cin and not like cin get line. Maybe that would fix it. Unfortunately, that's out of scope for what we're doing today. We have our executable here. This is being Linux. It doesn't have a .exe at the end. I'm going to commit our last change to fight.c++. combine ifstream in and iOS binary enum values. Uh-oh. That needs to change to ifstream.binary, binary. The only reason I'm changing it is because I don't know that iOS and ifstream enums have the same values. See, this has open mode 4. I go to iOS binary. This has okay, it's equal to iOS base open mode 4. And this is 8. So the combination of these is 12. That's what this OR would do. And I think they both are using the same iOS base open mode. In theory, I could type iOS in like so, and it's the same deal. Well, I already changed them all, so I'm not going to change them back. Let's be consistent, guys. Okay, guys, we have a program that compiles and kinda sort of runs. Let's type in a second combatant's name and we'll get a little feel for what's happening here. This guy will be Speglaba. Let's see what happened. First combatant is blank. Health 15, 2, 3, 6, 5. The health is a function of the stamina. 3 times the stamina. They rolled the same on strength. Blank has 3 dexterity versus Speglaba's 4. 6 agility versus Speglaba's 4. They both have the 16 that we saw in the previous video, the starting stats. So, the output here is kind of funky. Blank for this might have to do with the fact that his name is messed up, but we got blank for 1 point of damage, T-Wedgie for 3 points of damage to Speglaba's eyes. Speglaba attempts to attack but dodges, and there's a little bit of that going on. And I think Speglaba won. Oh, blank won. Okay, we really have to fix that input issue for the name to make sure that it doesn't accept a blank or a null or new line character or whatever it was that messed it up. It could be a null character. We're gonna quit. I don't even want to mess with the career because that's a whole nother thing. But it works, you guys. I'm pretty excited about that. In our next video, we're gonna make it work better.